Dr. Robin, as most of us know her, to our virtual learning for the morning. She's a NearPod enthusiast, among other things. So we are going to give her the chance to get started. And thank you, Robin, for joining us.
So thank you for having me. And the first thing I do want to do is share my screen so that you are able to see, I think I have it in the right place. Yes, so that you are able to see if you went to NearPod and you were coming as a student, what it would look like. And so if your students were going to nearpod.com, when they join a lesson, they would join with the code that you provide. It is a code that NearPod randomly selects. And then they would choose join lesson. And when they do that joining of the lesson, they'll be asked to enter their name. I will share with you, my internet has been a little bit slow today, so hopefully things kind of kick into gear. And they would be able to enter their name. When it comes to remote learning, I very often remind my students when I put the directions up in Google Classroom to make sure to use their first name and last name so that I know where they're actually joining from and who they are, so I can give them adequate credit. And so that's what it would look like. And then as a student, you would end up seeing the first slide. And I've set this to be student paced. If you have two devices or you are able to actually split your screen, I am going to be presenting using the NearPod platform, and I'm not sure who's going to be monitoring the question box, but please at any point completely stop me and feel free to ask questions. One of the tools for your students that NearPod allows is something called Notes Navigator. And so while you have information up, your students have the ability to actually open up notes that would then save to whatever format they choose to save to. And so this is something that I use in my classroom even to help modify for students who have special needs, because they might say that they have to type their materials in. So, so that's one of the features that's definitely available to use. As I stop sharing my screen, I'm going to show you what the app might look like. And so I have the iPad app. And so I simply would open NearPod and then I would enter the same code. And so that's another way, if you're reaching remote learners, you know, they can do this on their computer, but again, they can do it from the iPad. And then what it does is it actually downloads the presentation for them. As we go through today, hopefully you're able to actually access NearPod, because what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be presenting through the lesson, which is currently set to be live. And so those of you who are not connected, you're going to get to hear me, but you're not going to see some of the materials that I have here with the NearPod application. And Diana, please, at any point, if there's a question either in the chat box or in the question and answer section, just interrupt me and we will go from there with that. Ultimately, my goal is that by the end of this experience, you'll be able to identify at least 3 NearPod tools to use in the classroom to engage students in lessons. Also determine one way to use NearPod for a formative assessment, and know some strategies for using NearPod for remote learning setting. And so the first thing I share with you is that when I use it with my students in the remote setting, I don't let them get too far before I give them the reminder about using their first name and their last name or last initial, about making sure that they're using the NearPod window. And so the slide that you'll see in front of you if you joined NearPod was what I used. I started my 7th graders remotely with remote learning. I had never met them before. I had no idea who they were. They had never experienced NearPod with me. And so they got an intro slide like you see in front of you that says, welcome to your first class activity. Here are some helpful tips. And then after that first activity, my helpful tip simply became the reminder about using their name. One of the ways when you're in a live setting that's great to use NearPod is to conduct a poll. And for me, a poll is a good quick summary. It's a comprehension check. It's an engagement check. I've had some people suggest they use a blank poll. And then as a general practice, read a question aloud. And if you have a blank poll, they can easily respond. For the purpose of our experience today, you should see that you have a poll appearing in front of you now. And that poll simply asks, how familiar are you with NearPod? Just to note, there are 4 choices, and depending on the device that you're using, it might be that you need to scroll to see the answer. The disadvantage, and I'm watching your responses come in live in front of me, I will share with you one of the disadvantages with a poll is that students are allowed to share, to choose multiple answers. And so sometimes that can be, if you're trying to get a feel for something, that can be a deterrent. Also, if I were in the class setting, and I'm going to share my screen as I see it as the teacher right now, and that's going to reveal some information to some of you about your classmates. But as the teacher looking at this screen, I'm also, if I'm in the real classroom setting, able to identify who hasn't answered, because I see someone hasn't answered, and then scroll down. Oh, and there I find it, Robin McLean and Honeycutt, both of those people did not answer. And so if I was in the real classroom, I'm able to go to my student and kind of give them some extra support. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen in the Zoom format and then share with you on your NearPod what it ends up looking like for you. So if you are the student, you get to see that 37.5% of your class have never heard of it. Results just changed. 36% of your class have never heard of it. Some have heard of it and haven't used it. And so you get to see overall where your class fares. A reminder as I share this, and this has been, something huge for me as a technology advocate to be mindful of. Technology is an enhancement, not a replacement. And I need to be mindful of the fact that technology is going to be a tool that really helps me be able to reach my students, to kind of approach some different learning modalities, but I am, as the teacher, have the impact that's going to happen. And, I have the ability to control what happens. The next activity that you'll see, it's going to be something called a collaborate. And there's a few settings for collaborate. So again, I'm going to share the screen that you are seeing with me as the teacher, what you would see as the teacher. And collaborate is used to share ideas. If you're in a live pace, as the teacher, before the collaborate even starts, you get something that looks like I'm having a glitch. It does not look this ugly, but it does give you the option, would you like to approve student comments before they're posted? In the live setting, if you have a class that you're like, I'm not quite sure about them, you would definitely want to approve what your students' comments are. Traditionally, I do no, and I will tell you, I'm going to go back for a second. Just because it looks like there we go. This is what really you would end up seeing when it's fully functioning. And so, no, I don't want to approve. I trust my students. And what you'll see as a student is you'll start to see your classmates' responses. If you are on a Chromebook as you're watching this, and this is something I often have to share with students, is sometimes the Chromebook screen is small, and so you don't see the bottom bar to enter. Now you can see, and because I have screen view right now, you see that Sharisa answered, and you see that she says her name. And so this is where you as a teacher have power. And so you'll notice that the prompt said, share who you are, where you teach, your favorite topic to teach. And so I, as the teacher, have the ability to, and I'll use Amy as my example, I have the ability to delete Amy because she didn't necessarily follow all of the directions in the prompt. And so other students, you're not seeing names. All you'll see is that a deleted card happened. So again, I'm going to stop my share and let you continue to kind of respond, see what your colleagues are responding, and keep in mind that there are ways that you're able to use this as a tool afterwards. Like you'll notice right now, nobody has liked an answer someone gave. I was in a session once where they said, okay, here's an idea we want to brainstorm. Put this idea down. Don't like anybody's yet. And then after a certain time, they got to vote by liking what their favorite idea was. And so there's different ways to use the Collaborate board as a tool. In remote learning, there's a setting that you're actually able to allow these responses to happen. And then as a teacher, and again, I'm going to go share my screen with you so you get to see the teacher view. As a teacher, I have the ability, if I want, to share those responses on that board via a link. So I could share that to a Google Classroom. If it was something that I wanted the community or the world to know, I could actually put it on Facebook or Twitter. Again, giving students the opportunity for an authentic audience, reaching that real authentic audience. And I see a question in the chat box, and so I'm going to answer that. It says, do you walk around with your laptop/iPad in the classroom? So you're interacting with kids, but also approving and looking at who responds in real time on your device. Yes, that has become the majority of the times that the way that I use it is I'm going to have it open usually on a Chromebook, simply because it's a bigger screen for me. That makes it a little easier. And that way I'm able to kind of walk around and interact. Again, next year, that might not be an opportunity, but that is, where we're at right now. Another tool that I use is something called a Draw It, and it allows, a lot of multi-purpose use in terms of how you can use it. It could be to kind of sketch an idea for new vocabulary, to show work in math applications in ag, to summarize learning, to lead into a lesson. And in this remote learning experience, I discovered that some colleagues had put up pictures in their Google Classrooms that they used as a reference tool for their students. And so when I was in the classroom, face-to-face setting, I was able to kind of demonstrate how the Draw It tools worked with my students. When I was in remote learning and I had those 7th graders I never met, as intuitive as we like to think students are, they're not necessarily that intuitive sometimes. And so I put up this feature as a reference point for them, how to use the tools. And I didn't embed it in a NearPod like you're seeing. It was in our Google Classroom in the resources section. And then also how to use the text box. And so there my students had this reference point that they could go back to so they didn't have to deal with some of the frustration of how does it work. And so what you'll see now is you as a student in the class, this might have been after a lesson we did on how people use animals. And it says, draw your favorite way that people use animals. Note, if your drawing's hard to identify what the use might be, feel free to use the text tool to add a caption. And so here's this opportunity, here's this text tool. And students with iPads tend to fare a little bit better than students on Chromebooks, because on an iPad, they can finger trace, they can draw, they can do. On a Chromebook, that trackpad is sometimes challenging but you'll notice you could add an image. All right, Anthony asked the question, when a student takes notes with Note Navigator, do we see the slide with notes in Notes? Yes. So Anthony, the we, if you mean we being the student will see the slide with the notes in Notes. This is something for those of you that might be hosting student teachers. I share this with you. I had a student teacher this spring. She was presenting a lesson using NearPod, and I decided, hey, what if I open up the Notes tab and I actually provided comment and feedback in my notes as she was presenting material, and it saved to my Google Drive. And then I was able to share my notes with her. And so there she got to see what she was presenting and what my feedback was in terms of interacting with students or using the content. And so, you know, from a teacher perspective, how can we use this beyond in our classroom? If you have a student teacher using it, great tool to provide them feedback. Now, I'm going back to seeing some of your drawings. There's a setting that when I do a live lesson, I've come to use, and that is the timer, because I've discovered that using the timer helps give students a countdown, a reality check, and keeps me on pace in the classroom. What I then, as the teacher, have the opportunity to do, and if you want a chance for yours to be shared, make sure you hit submit right now. What I, as the teacher, do is then I will share an image that somebody created. And students will see it on their screen, and they'll see that image without any name or without any, identifying features. Helps the silent student to be able to connect, to have their voice heard. So it's a real plus. And so, you'll notice that we just had 2 students who shared food as a major use. One kind of looked at the meat aspect. One is looking at the dairy aspect. Then we have another student who decided to grab a picture, and we can kind of make that connection. And so again, give students the opportunity to have their voice heard without necessarily being heard. One of the other ways I use it is to provide virtual experience, and they can be 360s or videos. Couple tips related to that. I strongly encourage, if you are doing a 360 virtual tour, that you give a prompt prior to the trip so that students know what to focus on, what to look for, and then afterwards have an answer slide. So it provides students with accountability in what they looked for. I've discovered, especially with middle schoolers, if you don't give that prompt and remind them to focus, they'll be looking to see what someone is wearing as opposed to what they are actually looking at. And so in this example, I've got, as we visit the hydroponic setup, what factors do you notice that might impact plant growth? So again, makes a look for, gives a connection to maybe something that we're learning in the plant science unit. And students get to see on their device something that is a 360 format. And with that format, then it does give the opportunity, if they happen to have 3D goggles and they're looking on their phone, they could pop it into that goggle and they could turn their head. If you went to GLAG 20 and you got the box from Texas A&M, I forget which one it was, that sponsored them, that's a way to give that 3D version. So again, give students the chance to look, and then give them the follow-up. Identify factors you observed related to plant growth and how that might impact the plants. Be as specific as you can. Again, in this example that you see, this is another way to use NearPod. It's got the short answer. And again, and I'm not going to have you do that short answer, but again, you can share that out with students, individual responses, or it gives you as the teacher, oh, wait a second, no one's mentioning light as a factor. Maybe we need to readdress that we don't just need sunshine. So, ways to kind of get a pulse on where your students are learning. I also use a prompt before a video, and you'll notice it says, as you watch the next video, consider how hydroponics and aquaponics differ. I also said I didn't watch it. I just searched for an example. Don't try that in the classroom. I'm going to share my screen so you can see what the teacher sees when this video actually happens to play. Something I want you to be aware of is, and it's not official until next month, those of you familiar with Edpuzzle, NearPod is going to have something very similar to Edpuzzle coming out, where you will be able to watch a video and have those components of Edpuzzle where you check in throughout. So that's something to look forward to. It's in beta testing right now. When you go to a video to play, if you're in the teacher led, it gives you two choices. If I know that I'm going to play a video in my classroom, that is when I'm actually using my desktop computer, because I will play it only on the teacher device. If you hit all devices and students don't have headphones, it's a terrible thing. I'm not going to play this video. I just wanted you to see that videos can be embedded. And then the other aspect to be aware of, and this slide that you see here, did the video work for you? This is something I use in remote learning. I have learned that for some reason, YouTube gets blocked by a lot of video, a lot of interfaces. So when I'm in the remote learning and I'm doing this student paced, I have a graphic up for my students that says, if it didn't work, fine, skip it. What I use for my videos is I also use Share Safe, and that gets it to an aspect that students are able to see. The next item that you'll see in your student view is a Venn diagram. And so that Venn diagram, I'm actually going to show you what it looked like in my original presentation, but you have the ability to take a background and insert it on a Draw It. And so I'm going to pause right here and show you what I did in terms of how I got to the point I did right now with where we are in terms of your presentation. And so I used something called the NearPod add-on in Google Slides. This has been a game changer for me because it makes it so easy to create the backgrounds I want. I can have whatever jazzy Google slide I want. And I was asked, do I have some of the slides, like this warning slide, do I have a master file of them? And what I'll do is I'm making myself a note to put together a Google Slides master talking piece slide, and I will Google Slides. I will share that with you following this presentation. I'll start to put it together and then I'll share it with you. And what my Draw It looked like originally, I had an image that I put the circles in on a slide. And so you can kind of see where I had used a slide template, and that slide is there. And then I chose the option of the add-on NearPod, and all of the elements that you saw in the presentation today so far have been added because of the NearPod add-on through Google Slides. And like I said, my internet's a hint slow today, but that would eventually pop up. It's been honestly a game changer for me. The disadvantage is, and this is a struggle for people who might be a perfectionist like I sometimes am, if you catch a mistake in your slides after you've launched the presentation, fixing it in the slides won't change it for that presentation. It will only change it for future presentations. So that's something to be aware of. Again, I'm just kind of checking the chat, making sure we're good. I think I addressed both of those questions there. So as we move on, so the Venn diagram, again, another way to share, you know, a template with your students, but to give them feedback. When NearPod has a quiz, I have students who often panic because they see the word quiz. And so what I've done is I've put a don't panic slide on. You know, it says the next slide you will see says quiz. In the classroom, I could tell them that. Face to face, I can tell them that. When it comes to remote learning, I can't tell them don't panic. So you have a 3-question quiz right now. Feel free to go ahead and take it. And then I'll show you the teacher view in terms of what you would see as results. So take a moment, take your 3-question quiz. Okay, I'm going to share my screen just so you can see from the teacher view what's starting to come in. And so what you'll see is, as a teacher, in real time, I get to see, oh, wait, you know, someone struggled with question number 3. And so I can scroll down, and if I see a question that commonly people struggled with, I realize that in real-time teaching, immediately I need to go back and readdress that misconception. You know, before I even move forward, okay, how can we tackle that? If I see that, you know, maybe one person got it wrong, then I will do some modified teaching, kind of help give them support, but I don't need to immediately address the concern with the whole class. In terms of some other ways that we can use NearPod, because I kind of highlighted some that I feel are the most useful for getting some real-time results, some feedback, getting some student interaction. One of the other ways that you're able to use NearPod is to add a link to web content. And so right now you probably see on your screen the option to open in a new window. And what I've taken you to in that is the NearPod website that, if you scroll down, it talks about some of the formative teaching tools. And so that's a resource that NearPod provides that gets into areas that I haven't even talked about yet. The next aspect I want to share with you, and so you'll see it on your screen. I did a screenshot simply because I didn't want to open a report live and have you see any of my student names. After a presentation is over, you actually get a report. And that report tells you student participation. It can tell you the results of your quiz. It can tell you the results of the poll. And so it provides you with a lot of feedback and information so that you know how your students are doing. When it comes to remote learning, I have had teachers tell me they don't find NearPod as effective in remote learning because they want that real-time data. And as you can see with our presentation today, you're getting some of that real-time data based on the interactions that we're kind of having, and I'm giving feedback. If we're in a concurrent setting next year, and I say concurrent because I've been told that, you know, hybrid is when you're face-to-face all and remote all. Concurrent is when you're remote and face-to-face happening at the same time. I think that I would use this as a student-paced version. And so that's one of the ways that you can do it, and then get a report and follow up with the report. I'm going to share with you now I'm going to give you a tour of NearPod itself so that you can kind of see that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So when you have NearPod, there's a NearPod library, and you can see with my library that I've got several different folders organized. We happen to have a school account, and my school made me a district administrator of it. So different accounts have different features, but you have the ability to search the NearPod lesson library. I will share with you that as agriculture teachers, sometimes I'm, you know, semi reinventing the wheel because there's not a lot of agriculture resources out there. But I also know that when I go to look for photosynthesis, when I go to look for animal life cycles or plant life cycles, that they do have resources in their library to search. And again, I apologize because my internet is not operating at peak speed right now. But it gives you the opportunity to, there we go. It gives you the opportunity to research based on subject area, based on grade level, also based on whether you want a full lesson, some warm-ups, some virtual reality. Some of the items are paid, some are free. And I want to wrap up today with sharing a resource with you that I have put together in a tool called Wakelet. And what I've done, and I'm going to share this link with you, there we go, in the chat box as well, is I have composed a resource that will allow you to go back and, hang on, I'm headed to the chat box so I can share this with you. There we go. I've composed a resource that basically hyperlinks to a few of what I've shared with you, but also some free trainings that NearPod does. Some are self-paced, some are live. I've included a blog post they have for how to use the Google Slides add-on. Also, a common question in remote learning was that student-paced. How do you do a student-paced collaborate board? I have one of the slides there was the stop. This was just an example that someone had created. And again, this example as well, I did not create. I do have the using features graphics there. And then at the bottom of it, I have NearPod Gold has some of the free features. And so I put, because I'm a NearPod pioneer, you can get 3 months of Gold free. Here is my advice to you, although you may want to play with it now, keep in mind the timing of your school year. And with that timing of your school year, plan it accordingly so that you are able to start and use NearPod into the school year. The last slide that I'm going to share on your NearPod, and then I'll open it up for questions, is just how you can reach me. And the personal / professional me is RC McLean on Twitter. But if you want to see how, you know, things shape up in my classroom, I have school permission to post student pictures at the other two. And my email is also there and available. So with that, I'm going to open up the last 9 minutes. I believe we're here till 10:45. The last 9 minutes for questions. And I see Diana's question is, I've used it a bit. Teachers can upload their own PowerPoints and adapt them. Yes, that is correct. So teachers do have the ability to upload their own PowerPoints, adapt them. It's be careful when you do that, because there's two ways to upload a PowerPoint. One is so that each of your slides are individual. One is so that it appears as a slideshow. And so I use the, when I upload a PowerPoint that I have, I use the individual option so I can put those interactives in between. Otherwise, it's just a huge stream of consciousness. Okay, Nick has asked NearPod versus Edpuzzle. So Edpuzzle is more a specific video based where you can put video questions in and then have them stop at certain points. NearPod has several more interactive features, and I don't know how it's going to shape out with their beta version of questions that you can put in the NearPod. That's supposed to be similar to Edpuzzle, and the beta just rolled out right after my school got out. So I haven't piloted that with the class. So Nick, that's the best I can answer there. By the way, are any of you randomly calling me from Lebanon, Pennsylvania? Because I have a call from Lebanon coming in. Feel free to ask your question here. Okay, another question. Oh, you have an Edpuzzle session at noon today. Other questions? If not, I'm going to share my screen again and go into just kind of a quick how you could create your first NearPod. And then someone else can keep an eye on the chat box. Oops, there's a question. Okay. If you were to create your first NearPod and choosing to do it in NearPod and not on Google Slides, all you would do is when you're logged into NearPod, you hit create. It does give you the option. By the way, because I'm beta testing it, and Nick, this gets to the Edpuzzle, because I'm beta testing, interactive video option would be like the Edpuzzle. Gives me the option to create the lesson in Google Slides, lesson in NearPod. For the sake of this demo, I'll use lesson in NearPod, except my internet's funky. And any of the features that you want, you would title your lesson. And then you would add features simply by choosing add, and then add the features. Those of you that do science, they have PhET simulations available. And so there's several science related aspects with acid and base solutions. Great if you're doing something with pH. And so they have some of these balancing equations. I don't know that you get into that in your agriculture classes, but they do have several simulations available that you could add. And so you would just choose something and add. They do have BBC video as well. And if you're a Microsoft school, they have Sway. Okay, if a teacher were to want to use this for synchronous learning in the fall, how might they convince their admin that this is a worthy investment? And do I have ammunition for them to use in this ask? Yes, I can put there, I'm putting another note to myself. One of the features that they have, and if I had launched Zoom myself, it actually would have worked. It's a new beta feature. For schools that are using Zoom, you can launch them together, making it easier for students. In terms of a convince for admin, one of the selling points for my admin has been the fact that I have, this is admin's favorite word, data. I have data to see student growth and progress if I give them an initial starting point, and I can see the formative assessment. And so keywords for my admin have been formative assessment, have been some of that database learning. I think one of the best remote learning scenarios that this offers is by launching a student PACE, which is something that would be a gold or platinum account investment. You can't launch student PACE on the free. By launching student PACE, you can have students who might have to share a device in their home, who might not have reliable internet access. You can have them do this when it's convenient for them. I've had students doing, and I can kind of tell as their results come in just based on when they're clicking things in Google Classroom. I've had students do this at 2 a.m. because they live in a house that has 7 siblings. So I think, the opportunity for students to do it at their pace, and then if you have that face-to-face class time, you're now able to use that feedback to tailor it. So I think that's a key support there. In the question and answer, okay. So Google Suite certified this summer. School is requiring it. How is NearPod better than Google Suite? I'm looking at time management. Okay, NearPod is, and I'm not going to say better, NearPod is a tool to use with Google Suites. And so that's one of the aspects I've discovered. I can share it in Google Classroom. So I've got Google Classroom, boom, my students have access to it easily. And I can have, I don't need to have a separate Google form. I've got data because of the quiz. I don't have to put a Google drawing in. So it integrates and complements as instead of being a comparison in my mind, because we are a Google school. Any other questions? Pennsylvania, thank you for letting me join you today. I have, my email is available to you. Feel free to email me, ask me questions. I'm here to support you. And even though all you saw was my head, I do have Teach Ag on because I wanted to be sure to represent.
Dr. McLean, we surely appreciate your time, and I've learned a lot myself. I was dabbling with this, but you convinced me that I'm going to be using this in the fall as well. So we want to appreciate you for your time and getting back to us on those things that you're going to follow up with. I will remind everyone that we're asked to be going back to the main session. In fact, I'll put it in the chat box for you right now, just so that you know where we're headed next. But that is because they want to be able to stick us into the next group of sessions for the hot topic discussion. So when you get a chance, please go over there and then take that 15-minute break so that they can divvy you up into equitable sessions while you were waiting. So with that, I don't know if everyone can actually give her a round of applause with like an emote. Our emotes disabled. If not, you'll just have to take me for their word that they're giving you a round of applause. Oh no, there they are. They're raising. Some people are raising and lowering their hands. That works too. But we do appreciate your time. We appreciate you hanging out with us and giving us some really awesome PDs. So with that, if there's no other questions, I'm going to stop the recording and have everyone go back to that main session. We thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.